Hey Ryan,
Hey
um,
Joe.
just hey, just in reference to what we were chatting about earlier, I'd be curious to hear you speak about the value of universal mistrust.
So I see mistrust as like no different than trust, you know? They're still part of this pendulum, you know? The trusting is the investment, the mistrusting is the pushing away or the kind of rejection. It has its place though. Part of mistrust, or what Jed would refer to as mistrust, it ties into his famous statement from Spiritual Enlightenment, the damnest thing. I think it's in that one where he says no belief is true. So uh, trust has to do with our perception of truth and placing value in that. And generally, what we think is true is, I mean, absolutely, what we think is true is thought. Yeah. So to be invested in any particular system of thought, or even to have conviction in experience. Yeah, it's a kind of, we should investigate and see what is it that needs to trust, and what is it that needs to mistrust, and what is it that is experiencing relief or security from either trusting or mistrusting. If you have an inclination towards doubt, and doubt is what feels safe for you, then to me it's just as pernicious as the opposite, which is uh having trust being something that feels safe for you. The idea, from what I've presented all this time, is that go beyond need and go beyond safety, and transcend this dichotomy of trust and mistrust and faith and doubt and all of this. Yeah, with trust, there's this sense there's this sense that we need things to be okay. Like something's wrong with suffering, something is wrong with pain, something's wrong with how you feel or the way things are. So you need to trust in something else. You need to trust in something higher. You need to trust in something that's beyond yourself, or beyond what you know, beyond what you're experiencing, because what you're experiencing is being interpreted as being insufficient or problematic. I'm the problem. There's something wrong with me. These are all thoughts. These are all beliefs. These are all illusions. So if mistrust and doubt is um, something that is comfortable for you, like a good example, all of us know, have met at one point in time, or have been this person at one point in time, is like you get bliss from being an atheist. Like there's pleasure in being a skeptic and in denouncing everything and really cutting apart um, anything that you can, except science, apparently, which is just as much of a belief system, in my opinion. So it's not the thing itself; it's how that particular structure is being utilized for the ego to produce the illusion of safety. If mistrust produces the illusion of safety, it's just as pernicious as trust producing the sense of safety. The sense of safety is a fabrication. It's a thing in my mind. It's a feeling. It's a state. It comes and it goes. I get it. It's important. People value it. Everyone wants to feel safe. No one wants to feel threatened. This is human stuff. So well, we're applying it to non-duality or to the discussion here. Of course, you know, these things have their place in psychology and they have their place in our human interactions. None of us wants to be around an unsafe person. As soon as that happens, red flags go up. There's biological mechanisms in place to keep us away from unsafe situations and unsafe people. That's all granted. But when it comes to your practice, your spirituality, your religion, your meditation, that you're doing this to produce a sense of safety, whether it's through trust or whether it's through mistrust. It's something that you're generating. You're making it. So if you feel better because of trust, you can see that that's an event that is happening in the field of your experience. Like you could look at the mechanisms, let's put aside the fact whether these spiritual masters and higher beings exist or not, right? But let's say I'm in a moment of crisis and I feel unsafe. What could happen is I would think of my teacher or something that provides that sense of safety. So if we look at it mechanistically, what's happening is there's a thought in my mind. That thought is familiar to me and it generates the sense within my system that things are okay. That's actually the mechanism that is immediate. Like that's what's going on. You know, if I wasn't I have no connection to Muhammad, right? So in a time of crisis, I'm not gonna think of Muhammad. In a time of crisis, if you have a connection to mistrust, that's what you're going to go to for safety. That, in my humble opinion, can be discarded because it's still outcome based. I need to feel okay. I need to feel like safe. I need to feel grounded. Okay, if you really need to feel safe and you really need to feel grounded, fine. You know. And maybe this is harsh, but at one point in time when I was a kid, I was like, I don't know, 4. I was young at some point. I was young. I don't remember the exact age, but I was like too old to be using a freaking drinking milk through a bottle. I love that bottle. Anyways, so my dad just one day, I was drinking from the bottle, and my dad was like, "You're too old for this." He threw it in the trash. Devastating, but necessary. So this whole if you could actually get beyond needing to feel okay, your suffering would reduce dramatically. If it just clicked and dawned on you very clearly that there's actually nothing wrong with suffering, and there's nothing wrong with not feeling okay. There's nothing wrong with feeling insufficient. There's nothing wrong with guilt. There's nothing wrong with sadness. There's nothing wrong with grief. There's nothing wrong with being a loser. There's nothing wrong with feeling like you don't have the things that you want or need. That cuts out so much of the noise, because there's this program, and my suspicion is that this is related to being an animal, that bad feelings are wrong and should be avoided. We don't actually know if that's true. So this continual or persistent need to be okay is a kind of craving. This has been mentioned many times in this, in these sessions, this thing about groundlessness and free falling and not having anything to hold to, and just needing something to grasp or something to make you feel safe and okay. And yeah, when you really need that, of course, I wouldn't deny it from you. No, maybe I would actually, depending on the person and the situation. But But my point there is that you want to see where that need is coming from, you know, where that sense of needing to mistrust or needing to doubt or needing to have faith or needing to hope is coming from. And there's nothing wrong with hope, faith, doubt, whatever. But the point is to see what's behind it. You know, why am I not okay with things not being okay? Like what is that really? When I look into the sensations in the body, what's there? You know, is there actually anything wrong with fear? How much of my anxiety is produced by the fact that I don't like my anxiety? How much of my anxiety is produced by the fact that I want this to stop? These are good questions, important questions. When you ask these questions, you can begin to see how these mechanisms are working in your mind. Yeah, investigate, look, see what is happening. You know, part of the reason that meditation training is useful and part of the reason that having a daily practice is very useful is because there needs to be enough power in the system to investigate precisely. If your attention's fluttering all over the place and you're sleepy, how are you going to investigate accurately, right? But if you have a regular practice or if you're just clear, you're able to cut through your own emotional nonsense about a situation. You're able to have perspective. You're able to zoom out and see what it is that you're doing to yourself. Our life and suffering is born of thought. It's narrative. I need to feel closer. I need to feel safe. I need, I need, I need, I need. I need is a belief. I don't need is also a belief, right? So yeah, if you can see that whatever is born of thought is just another event, is freedom. But when you're stuck in the narrative, you're continuously in this pendulum swing. You're in this dance of wanting to feel safe, getting away from feeling unsafe, wanting to feel uh, grounded. And yeah, there's of course it has its place. I'm not the most safe person to learn from, you know? I'm really not. So yeah, because I see uh, these constructs and motivations as just events in the field of experience, there's a limitation to how seriously I'm able to take them. So like I can get upset, I can get pissed off about something, right? But at some point that like just like a dream ending, that simulation or that reaction ends, and then bang, it's back to what it was, and you're seeing that that was just a reaction in the domain of thought and feeling, and that's all that it is. The difficulty here, and where I'd probably get pushback from a lot of people, even friends of mine that are teachers and whatnot, is that if I'm classifying all thought and feeling as just events in the field of experience, just radiant presence appearing as that, or Buddha nature appearing as that, if I'm applying that to challenges and difficult things and negative things, does that mean it's also applied to the things that are closest to us, our actual sense of faith, trust in the path? Is that also applied to the enlightenment drive, to the impulse of awakening itself? Do I take it that far? Yes, I do. So if you're gonna be a purist in this sense and see the mechanisms for what they are and experience them as Buddha, experience them as illumination, it's equalized across the board. So all the things that are closest to you are just as much illumination as all the things that are supposedly or apparently furthest from you, or that you have distaste and disdain for. It doesn't mean that there aren't preferences, but those preferences are conditioned. They exist as part of this biological apparatus and psychology that you've inherited from culture and your experiences. Yeah, so if you take it far enough, if you actually really take it far enough with this non-investment in thinking, it can produce this kind of groundlessness abyss. And I think that's what so many of us are running from. There's this feeling, and there's this sense that there has to be something that I can hang my my mom uses a saying, hang my heart on. And I think you can do that before awakening. But I think after the fact, it becomes increasingly difficult to do that. And that's why there's this, post-awakening abyss and dark night that people deal with, because the constructed nature of everything is presenting itself. And if you're able to experience that constructed nature as love, then you're able to be at peace even with really immense suffering. But it doesn't always present itself that way. So always look for what's part of this is getting very clear on our motivations, like what's actually driving the things that we do. What's driving the reason that we practice? Why are we doing this? Sometimes when you ask yourself why you're doing something, you don't know. Or why it is you're so obsessed with something, you don't know immediately. So it takes the gift and the power of discernment to know why you're involved in something, to know why you have a problem, or why this thing is an issue for you, whatever it is. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. And as much as like everything you said at the beginning, I know it absolutely pertains to me. What I was finding, because I've been sitting with Universal Mistrust when I've been meditating, is it dismantles everything. It goes as far, it seems to go as far as what you're pointing to. And
Mm-hmm.
it dismantles itself. It dismantles any thought, any attachment to it as a concept, any idea of further. And any kind of impulse to push away or to cling, like if it's universal mistrust, it's universal. And it's gentle, is my experience. It's not like it's maybe not distrust where it's a decision. It's just this slightly more vague, and everything falls apart. And it
Mm.
does feel like that free fall that you're pointing to. And what's there then is like the paradox of, oh, well, then there's trust. All there is trusting in just what is, or beyond is. But yeah, that was really great, because a lot of the time I just need to hear what you said towards the beginning, because I know that's me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The free fall is the free fall is really this post awakening thing. It's like you're not what you were before, but you don't know exactly what's going on or why you're doing this. So there's just this like there's just this continual collapsing. But the free falling is happening to someone. That's the thing. If there wasn't a someone that's falling, then that specific phrase wouldn't be used. You know, there's only the sense of free falling and falling because there's this very subtle sense of needing a ground. It's like the sense of needing a ground produces the free fall. The very act of reaching for something, needing to reach for something, needing to come to some kind of conclusion, needing to come to something that makes sense. That need is what produces the free fall, because you're not able to find it. And since you're not able to find it, you're having the experience of free falling. So if that need is just released, or it stops arising, you're no longer needing a ground or seeking a ground, then the sense of falling stops. Like when it's very clear that whatever degree of falling is fundamentally here. If you really have the sense that nothing is here or that nothing is happening, why would you have the sense that there's a free fall? You know, free fall is movement, free fall is time. You know, free fall has also been compared to dissolution of self. That's the thing that initiates all of this. You experience the dissolution of self, or the self comes under the impression that it's dissolving and that you're losing who you were. That is what makes you reach. So you see there's a chain of events here. There's a chain of processes. Because you're not who you were before and you don't know what you are anymore, even the notion of R and you are falling apart. It creates a reflex of reaching for a ground. Then not being able to find one produces the effect of feeling like you're in a free fall. If your life was what it was before, none of this would be happening. So it's really just predicated on what's happening in time. And the reason I keep pointing all of you to this field and to Buddha nature and radiant presence here, this, whatever it is we want to call it, is because when we begin to see that motion and time itself are configurations of this, and they are this, then that can circumvent the belief or the notion that it's happening to a person. That you actually are losing yourself. What you're losing is thought. What you're losing is identification. And it's considered a loss in the sense that those things are very real before. And now increasingly not so much. But it's like waking up from a dream. You have all these situations in a dream. And then when you wake up in the morning, you don't take who and what you were in the dream as being serious. When the orientation to this field becomes your primary orientation, you stop taking what happens in the domain of thought and feeling seriously. So even if you still have reactions and the same thought patterns are there, they're arising in this different operating system. Where their reality is emptier than how it was before. So meditation, yoga, practice, in the sense of what opens or allows us to perceive the illumination of things, the illumination of this here-ness, is not in the actual states that are produced by given meditation systems. It's not in the supernormal powers or the transcendent abilities. Those are all fine and they happen. But the idea and the truth is that even those abilities and capacities are happening within this same field, within this God matrix of reality. When you start to experience your suffering as the God matrix of here, your discontent as the God matrix of here, your narratives as the God matrix of here, your memories as the God matrix of here, you're free. You don't even need suffering to end, because suffering is actually no suffering, it's God. So the whole edifice, the whole structure of the spiritual search and the journey to some kind of suffering-free state and some kind of ultimate transcendence, it becomes nullified in the realization that the illusion you've been subjected to is just as much God as the transcendent reality you're apparently heading towards. I mean, that's the unconditional freedom. That's the freedom from what happens, from what you were, from what has been, from what is. When you realize that what is, what has been, what will be, that it's all the same Buddha, and that it reaches everywhere. So how can you know that in your practice? How can you be established in that? You do so by recognizing it as the actual nature of your experience. It's not that, you drink, you put this cup to your mouth and you're like, I'm drinking God, That's a thought that you're imputing on experience. But that you just notice the drinking as the drinking, the seeing as the seeing, the hearing as the hearing, bare experience as bare experience. When you do that sufficiently, the illumination that is all this becomes perceptible. But because you're in mental gymnastics or you're invested in the edifice of thought, that illumination is obscured. Because you're trying to get out of the free fall, the illumination is obscured. Because you're obsessed with surrendering, the illumination is obscured. Because you need to be something different, the illumination is obscured. When you taste this more clearly, you find even that thought of wanting to be different is illumination. Bang, immediate, it's 1000%. Like I drink this cup, it's cold water. Cold water, 1000%. Every single aspect of this field of experience, every single sensation in your body, every thought that you have, every feeling that occurs is 1000% reality. And by that, I don't mean real or unreal. Put that aside. I mean, it's 1000% present. That's the meaning of the phrase, all things are naturally samadhi. It's because all things exhaust themselves completely in their arising. There's this continual, unbroken, continuous stream of experience that's immaculate and inconceivable. And you can listen to me say this. You can hear me say it 1,000 times. But unless you actually practice this, unless you practice enlightenment, unless you practice illumination, it does not become something that is accessible. Why? Because as soon as you put your attention to something, you're thinking of, whatever. There's not enough clarity in the consciousness to actually taste the liberation in the sense gates. If there's an investment, if there's a kind of control, you're attempting to control your experience, you're attempting to make it something. That control and that attempt to make it something is what obscures, it overlays what's there. So this is the folly and really the trap of all spiritual methods and all meditation practices, yoga, whatever it is. Because the mind is fabricating a specific state, it is able to enter that state. Because the mind is inclining itself towards bliss, it's able to experience bliss. Because the mind is inclining towards spaciousness, towards nothingness, towards whatever the quality is, the mind will then either at that point or at some point in the future, it will begin to experience that state. The mind is like a mirror. It has the nature of reflecting whatever it's inclined to. Whatever you put before the mirror, that's what's in it. So because of this nature of reflection, or this thing the mind does, it loses itself in its reflections. It loses itself in its projections. You start doing spiritual practice. What is the thought that comes? What is the sense that comes as a result of that practice? I am getting somewhere. And inevitably, you will arrive at that somewhere. If you don't see the you, the arriving, the somewhere, the destination, the goal, if you don't see that all of that is this same Buddha, is the same illumination, as the same awakeness that is everything. If this isn't seen, what you will see is the reflection. And what you will take as freedom or as final emancipation, whatever word you want to put on it, it will be attached to that specific condition, to that thing that you've arrived at. So if it's the bliss of nothingness, that becomes the new religion. That becomes your new religion. I have arrived at this final destination or whatever. And we see many examples of that. Claims that there's an ultimate state, claims that there's a final condition or a final enlightenment. Maybe there is. But I don't really see how there can be. So yeah, with training you can you can make a suffering mind not suffer. You know, with training, you can eliminate all your doubt, all your mental vacillation. So at one moment you feel this, the next moment you feel that, then you mistrust the thing you felt before, and you're in this back and forth, and you can't decide. You don't know you don't know which feeling is true. Whatever, all of that, you can eliminate that through training. You can make your mind so single pointed. You can make your attention so refined that you never experience that again. Even if you have that, if you don't see that it's all free, that it's all illumination, then your supposed liberation and freedom is tied to that condition. It's tied to that level of samadhi. And that's how people become, that's how you can find a meditator needing to practice, like needing stillness, needing. I thought all this was about getting beyond need. So unless the absolute view is there, unless the illumination that is the field becomes your living condition, you'll find yourself continuing to live in conditions, and then years will pass and you'll ask yourself, I've been meditating for 10 years. Why am I still not free? It's because I am not and free. Those separate things are all still concepts that have reality to you, that have significance, that mean something. When the meaning of phenomena and when the meaning of what appears, the meaning of what is believed is exhausted, is undone, then everything arises as a meaningfulness in of itself. The illumination of things is the apex of meaningfulness. The sensations on the inside of my mouth are meaningfulness. You know, the sweat coming off of your brow is freedom. It's a completely different orientation. So the question is, I get what you're saying. How is it applicable? There has to be time spent, generally I say daily, where this view, this understanding, this immediacy is the entirety of your orientation for those periods of time. So when you're walking, you dedicate time for a walk, and it's just walking. You don't do it with your phone. Even doing it with another person and you're talking, that can like just screw it up, at least in the beginning. So the more, it's like we're talking about something that's not a process within a framework of a process, right? But it's for the sake, it's because your mind has been habituated to the narrative structure. It's been habituated to time. So there has to be an unhabituation. In Zen, all at once you discover your original face, but vexations take time to be overturned. Vexations take time to be overturned is what I mean by unhabituation. Even after awakening, even after this, what I'm saying becomes clear to you, there's still unhabituation that has to happen. There's still the momentum of your previous operating system ruling your life. That's why, despite the recognition of awareness, despite the realization of the self or no self or emptiness, whatever it is we want to call it, you know, a lot of people, I'm sure they ask Jim Newman and other teachers, I get what you're saying. Why am I not free? And then they just point back to, it's because there's still a belief in a you and a belief in a notion of freedom. But, and they're like, okay, I get that. And then nothing changes. Why is it that nothing changes? Why? It's because the habituation, the momentum of the past is obscuring the illumination of this, of here, of now. The difference between a teacher and a student is that for the teacher, this has become the primary orientation, and the previous operating system is either dying or is no longer functional. For the student, the operating system of thought, belief, feeling, all of this, personhood, progression, that's all still real. That's the only difference. There's no difference in the mind. There's no everyone has to go to the bathroom. Everyone has to eat. Everyone prefers to be in the sun as opposed to, being in shivering cold. All of that is the same. It's just the investment in thought that is different. That's really all that's different. It's the investment in thought and the direct apprehension of enlightenment, of awakening, of illumination. It's not whatever. One blessing that I would say is, there's some really great moments in life. It's a blessing. It's the blessing you experience when you see someone crack in this regard. Like when it finally hits them. They start crying and bowing to you or whatever, whatever happens after. But the moment that it hits them, it's like there's this confusion, like their whole reality is shaking, and then bang, certainty. Wow, this is it. Oh my God, everything's awake. That's an event in time. And when it occurs, it's not like it wasn't there before. The difference is that before it was always there, unrecognized. It was always this, it was always here. You just believed that it was something else. You just believed in thought. And that's why you suffered. Don't get me wrong, I still suffer, when conditions are unfavorable. I'm in the hospital, I'm watching my grandma's hair fall out, they're suffering. But it's not the suffering that was before. The suffering that was there before was like, why is this happening? Like, this is so wrong, and you make everything about you. After this, the suffering is the same. The people that you love still die. Stuff doesn't work out. You lose all your money. You get dumped. All of that still happens. It just doesn't go into this I'm not good enough thing anymore. And when you lose that, I mean, what more could you ask for? To no longer have that persistent lack. That persistent lack is annihilated. It's like when the sun comes up. Let me see how much battery I got. Oh, there's battery on my headphones. It's like when the sun comes up. Have you ever seen this like in a field or where there's a lot of mist or fog? The sun comes up and the fog just like gradually gets dispelled by the heat and the sunlight. That's what the cessation of habituation or mental proliferation is like. It might happen all at once, but it often doesn't. So to realize your own freedom, to realize that you were always free, that you were never in bondage, you have to practice and live from this, in this. And the more that you do this, not because it's directed at some goal of transcendence, but the more noticing happens, the less power the habituation has. The problem with a lot of the non-dual stuff is because there's so much of an emphasis on not meditating and like the dangers of practice that you're probably not setting aside enough time to actually be this. So if you get the teachings and you listen to, you know, whoever, and the explanation is solid and it makes sense, and you're like, oh, I totally get that. But you just keep listening to more teachings and you keep going here and you keep going there and you keep chasing, then you're not actually looking at what's happening. Yeah, and I've had many students that, you know, they went to the best or they learned from the best. And after a lifetime of listening to teachings, they're still like, well, I'm still a person, you know, I still take all of my stuff seriously. I still believe that I'm separate, even though I technically know that I'm not. Why is that? The reason that is because of insufficient enlightenment practice, insufficient time in the illumination operating system. If all that you have been doing is learning and being in the narrative and being in the beliefs that come with non-duality, as opposed to the direct noticing and direct experience of this, then you're just living in a different set of ideas. And I'm actually not saying that everyone here is doing this. I'm referring to specific people. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you learn. If you don't sense this, if you don't notice the immediacy of what's happening, if the investment in what you're thinking doesn't cease, if the conviction in what you believe increases, you're just in a prison of belief systems, you know. When you see the belief system, the thought, the feeling is a configuration of the thing, it actually is God, you're free. And maybe you're only free in that moment. Maybe you were only free in that hour. Why? Because that was where your attention was. It's all driven by attention. You attended this again and again and again. You notice this again and again and again. And gradually, the realness of thought dies. And then thought begins to arise as freedom. You can do, let me see. So Kathy had the question, is this part of the reason why some teachers say this is not wantable? Does that mean when teachers say you don't really know what you're signing up for, you don't actually want this? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the whole concept or the whole reality of it.
Yeah. It depends on what they're referring to specifically. The freedom from mental proliferation and all these narratives, belief in them. I think generally you can say that um, certain people would want that. Like if you've gotten to a point in your life where you're just tired of yourself, you're just like over it, then of course the cessation or the ending of those narratives is something that you would want. It's the other stuff that can come with it, I think, that people would find um, uncomfortable, possibly. You know, like if it was to get to a point where, like, there are periods in my whatever where like even things very close to me were not recognizable anymore. You know, if you're the kind of person that has safety in thought and in belief, and then an awakening happens, and then the reality of thought and belief comes undone, that would be uncomfortable. That may be a sufferable condition. That may be so far from where you are that you could look back and say, why would anyone want this? You know, when you see meaning and meaninglessness as opposite faces of the Lord, a great deal of your motivations fall away because a lot of what we do is to get away from meaninglessness. So yeah, it just depends what they mean by that. But I think it's kind of a way of making it sound freaking cool, you know? Like, you don't want this. If you just got 1 second of this, your whole life would blow apart. Not necessarily. So depends what they're referring to specifically.
Well, everything you said tonight is mind blowing, but it's freedom.
You said I
It's real
usually said
freedom.
that, or
No, I'm saying that
oh,
tonight,
okay.
everything that you have said tonight, and you always say, it's clearer that it's freedom. And I get that it's also not freedom, but it's freeing.
Yeah.
It's settling. It's like it settles it. There's a real bad echo, so it's hard for me to talk.
No, it's good. I can hear you. I can hear you fine. But
It's reality.
yep.
I don't know what I'm saying, but I know it's true. I feel it.
Yeah, for the immediacy of presence experience, you don't need to trust that you don't need to trust you don't need to trust in this, you know. Like I don't need to trust in seeing. I don't need to trust in hearing. I don't need to trust in feeling. I don't need to trust in thought. I don't need to trust in saliva. I don't need to trust in my eyes blinking. It's just that there's so much happening in your mind we don't experience the perfection of all these little things. You know, imagine if you had this sense that like your continuity in time was broken and that you never knew anything and that everything was new. Imagine how crazy that would be. Like it would it would just be insane. It would just, I even get happy thinking about it, you know? But that's actually what's happening. Every single moment is like bang 1000%, bang 1000%. I never had this milk before. 1000%. But because of the because of the self in time, we're not able to experience the enlightenment that's always unfolding and that is immediately is presenting itself constantly, is blossoming constantly. All that's ever happening is it's blossoming. All that ever was is blossoming. But because we've been in the narrative, because we've been in our left brain, we've made it about us, and that's why we suffer. We put everything into a story because that's the only way to make things make sense. And it's that very story that's the reason that we suffer. If we could see that story is just as much God as the absence of the story would be, then boom. You know, your tongue becomes the Buddha, and every sound is awake. So, but if you spend too much time in your left brain and you don't spend enough time in the direct perception of illumination in reality as it is, seeing as it is, hearing as it is, thinking as it is, and there's always this lack. So, yeah. The point of practice
Right.
isn't to, oh yeah, ask something, say something, Carla.
Yeah. Um, yeah, a lot what you've been saying. It's, Um, since my father's passing, I mean, everything has fallen away. Unbelievably so,
Mm,
Um, I mean, with work, I mean, just everything, and there's moments where, it's met through the luminary, that it's just this profound, unbelievable feeling of unconditional, just being,
mm,
that's um and these last this last week has been excruciating. There's been like the groundless, but a groundless that is noticing the fall, and so there's just a lot of fear and clinging, and so it's like it's a feeling that I've worked with my entire life, actually.
mm,
It's a conditioning that's very, very tied to this the wound within the self of I, coming from childhood. It's a deep wound, and it's something that I have met the visual component of this wound. And it is dark, and it's the something in me that is just so fragmented, and it sits in the bottom of a well, and it's just very terrified, and so I've done work where like in 2020, the first time I met her, and it was about this 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 being with and listening, because it was very much an energetic thread that was just wanting to stay in this dark, wet, cold cavity and not be forgotten. It was just, but wanting to stay there, you know, and
Right.
um and it was profound to hear that as a message. Like it was, you know, it really brought me to my knees in that moment of just being with that. And I will say that, and I've also posted in the thread, there's times I would go to meet her and I transformed into an eagle and I actually would fly out of the well. There was this real relationship, you know. Um, yeah, but this has this groundlessness, this fear, this grasping, this attaching, this kind of seeking others, you know, for some safety, has brought me back into that well.
Mm.
And so these last 2 days has been, yeah, a deep release of just deep grief, profoundly so, profoundly, you know, and yet I had the vision of this energy again of her, and different talks that I've heard, you know, a Rinpoche that was talking about, you know, the beautiful ghost, this the being with of the energy, you know, and I had done that
Mm.
before, and then I listened to a talk, and I thought of you, what we had talked about this kind of, you know, your experience with the gobbling of the fear, you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
And I didn't do that. However, I did do something that versus being with it, you know, and kind of I actually moved into it. And and by moving into it, I was actually able to become the voice.
Uh,
And I'm coming out of that. These last 2 days have been pretty brutal. But I'm curious, you know, because it's a conditioning, it's a habituation, it's something that is like really, it's this, um, it just makes me curious about this, you know, the really full embodiment.
mm.
I stepped into it and spoke, you know, but I think of the real, you know, the kali, the gobbling, the real, you know, and I'm just curious of that because, um, yeah, just anything you have to add. I mean, it's just, and it has a gravity. I mean, it pulls, you know, it's so so everything you've said today about the luminary, I mean, it is an energy that is it's tough, you know, and I've tried to walk away. I mean, I've you know, it's there's a, and then I'm okay, the not trying, you know, but this was yeah, it's I'm just curious. I'm curious just to hear you.
So when it comes to healing, because that's really what's happening with this. When you're as your orientation shifts to this absolute and this as God, there's still the unfolding of what you are as a person in time. There's still your karma. You know, if you have it in your karma or your destiny to get sick or to, you know, encounter this condition or that condition, all of that will still unfold. So there are still things that are happening at the level of process and lessons, really. And they're ultimately in service to this enlightenment drive and this realization. It's those like shattered pieces of ourselves or of our psyche that are really at the core of our various afflictions and motivations. There's a reason why you push things away. There's a reason why you overstep or you over invest or you put yourself too much into things. There's a reason why you hate this or you hate that, or you can't stand this or you can't stand that. If you take every single one of those programs, every single one of those reactions, and you get to the core of it, you find some kind of wound, some kind of aspect of yourself that there's distaste for and disgust for. So as part of the, movement through life and the unfolding of your path and time, this is part of the integration. It's like because you suffered and because you went through certain things, it forced you to engage this integration or force you to collect these parts of yourself. Because you were in the well, that's the reason that you had to go find that part of yourself in the well. So it's part of this concept of growing a soul or growing the soul. The personhood, the broken parts, the healed parts, the soul, all of that is all of those aspects are they're configurations of this one uninterrupted field. But you find that wherever there's wounding, naturally there must be healing, whether it's in this life or in the next. In the same way that if I cut my arm right now, my body immediately the cells will begin to cover that wound. If there's wounds on the soul, which for many of us there are, that wounding initiates this process of healing and of integration. So a lot of spiritual teachings say you sign up for certain things before you're born. And it's because it's part of this mosaic of growing and developing consciousness that has a wide range of experience. There's qualities that you develop because of what you've gone through. There's qualities you are developing because of the suffering that is happening now. The passing away of a parent is one of the greatest initiations if you take it. Yeah, with one of the best advice I ever got from non-physical beings was pierce the fear. Pierce the fear if you can, right? Pierce the depression if you can, and not to get away with it, but almost like feeling that sadness and feeling that collapse, really opening yourself to what's there. It's like bowing to the angels of death, the masters of death, the masters of grief, the masters of despair. It's all part of the unfolding of the pathway in time. One of the big insights that had happened was it was like my mind was this planetary consciousness, and it zoomed in on me as a person. I told you this in our conversation, actually, I remember. And so everyone here is familiar with the scales of justice, right? There's like the scale, and your sins versus your virtues are weighed. And that's a representation of this process I'm about to describe. It zoomed in on me, and it was like there was an instantaneous download of all of the qualities in this mind-body matrix. So like emotional dexterity, 1 to 100, resilient, loving kindness, 1 to 100, compassion, all these qualities that we experience in the psyche, they were measured. And like my standing as a being in time was irrefutably clear. Like nothing was hidden at this level, nothing at all. And it was obvious that when there was this reckoning of my standing as a person in time, it was kind of like a post-life review thing, where it was like you die and you look back and all those angels are around you, or all those beings are around you, and the only currency that had mattered was what you did for other people, and how much love you gave, and what your understanding of your life was, love and wisdom. You see that those are the only things that mattered. When you have that reckoning and you see your like consciousness print out, essentially, it becomes obvious. It's like, oh, there were certain things that I should have worked on, and that's really what this healing thing is. And with the Bardo series, as I've taught it, this life is the Bardo. Like we're already in the Bardo. We're already going through the life review. That's why everyone thinks about the past. That's why there's this constant like assessment. The only problem is that it gets spun into a thing about me, and then we suffer because of it. But yeah, what you're going through, what everyone's going through, that's your training, that's your that's your teacher. There's the external teacher that appears and that gives you the teachings and that helps explain the path. And then there's life. And if you look back, you could see that you're always being given these breadcrumbs. You're always guided. You're always led back somehow, or maybe the leading back was happening, but you ignored it, blah, blah, blah. You resisted the calling, whatever. But grief, loss, the collapse of everything, it is the quick path, in my opinion. People talk Vajrayana, they talk about the lightning bolt path, which is like through the guru and the generation stage and all this. The lightning bolt path is whatever destroys your ego. That is the lightning bolt. Whatever eviscerates the holding on, the you, the I need it to be this way, the I don't like this, the I don't like that, the why can't I get it right. The lightning bolt path is what shatters that. And grief, I mean, you're already experiencing this. You know what's falling away, or what has fallen away. When my dad died, my spiritual competitiveness, my hatred, my attachment to my physical body in many respects, poof, just gone. Like never got it back. Death is a blessing. The fact that you love someone so much, that you love someone enough to be in this much pain, is a blessing. And it's teaching you. Let it keep teaching you. It's hard, it's awful, but you probably would have been bored with a normal life, you know? So you get this wild stuff. And this isn't just for you, this is for other people in here as well. I mean, some of you, you've suffered unimaginably with the loss of parents, with the loss of children, with the loss of relatives. And if you don't see it now, you'll find in time that woke you up more than so many other things, and that did something to you, that shook you awake from this dream more than so many other things, that clarified and destroyed so much of what was unnecessary in your life. And it may not be perceptible now, but in a few years, it becomes clear that, you know, that separation, that collapse, that falling apart, that worst thing that happened to you was almost always the best. Because it changes you more than anything else would. And as far as your journey in time is concerned, that's what it's all about. You know, from the absolute view, it's all the display of the Lord, but from the Lord living as the character in time, there are specific things we signed up for. And that's what's happening. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It may not help, you know what I mean? Like it may not make you feel any better. But it's not actually about feeling better.
Mhm. I mean, that's what's fascinating and helpful is
Yeah.
is also, you know, the not clinging to safety. It's that. It's the not clinging to safety and
Because we're so assaulted and just ripped apart in the heart, and because the feelings are so intense, you know, we're just trying to like get through the day. But an important question is, what am I learning here?
Mm.
You know, what am I learning? What is changing? What is falling away? Death confers wisdom, literally. You know, grief is like it's the worst thing. I mean, think of it.
terrible.
Yeah, you know, like losing a business, losing your house, losing money, whatever, you know, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sucks. But losing people you love, there's nothing worse. Because it's the worst
Mhm.
thing, it's the most powerful medicine. You know, you could be so in grief that your mind stops.
Mhm.
You could be so in grief that you let go of situation A and you let go of situation B. You can be so in grief that you finally say, look, you know, this is not going to work in my life. Done. You can you can use this. You know, this is an aspect of God appearing to you. You know, there in the Tibetan tradition, they call it the wrathful manifestations. In Islam, there's the 99 names of Allah. Now, I think one of those names is destroyer. If grief isn't the destroyer, I don't know what is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
The destroyer of the false and the destroyer of the unnecessary. So, but I'm sorry for what you're going through, and for everyone here that lost someone. You know, I know what that's like, and it's hell. But it will burn away everything if you let it.
Mm. It's burning.
If you let it.
It's
Right.
burning. Yeah.
You're like, I'm
Yeah.
scalding. I'm like a crab. I'm like a crab being boiled right now. Help. Help me, please. Take me out of
I
this
know.
pot of
Fucking
water.
pot of water. I know. The
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Notice you're not smoking tonight, Ryan.
I'm indoors.
Oh, that's why. Just kind of wanting you to smoke for us, for me.
I'm indoors. I thought my mom was gonna be here, you know?
Oh, okay. Aw.
So, but yeah, let me check. I think we're good on the time, everybody. All right. So this is wonderful. Thank you for your question, Carla, and
Thank you.
sending you loving kindness. You
Thank
know, whatever it is, just pierce it. Make it yoga.
Mm,
That's what it is. It's all yoga. It's all yoga. You know, the yoga of grief, the yoga of despair. We just tend to really not like those postures.
yeah.
So,
Thank you.
all right. You're welcome. All right, everybody. I'll see all of you next week. Enjoy the chat. I appreciate all the activity. I think it's great
Thank
that
you so much.
all of you are connecting. All right.
Thanks,
Have a good evening,
everyone.
everybody.
Lots of love.